All right. I'm going to leap in here. Before we name ourselves, I want to name this place and acknowledge our position of privilege on the traditional lands of the Beothuk and the present-day lands of the Mi'kmaq, the Innu, and the Inuit. A land acknowledgement recognizes the longer history. I listened to Honorable Murray Sinclair today, and he talked about reaching beyond the colonization and the history of European colonies to uphold the significance of Indigenous peoples. In the days and weeks and months and years ahead, we have many opportunities to move forward in reflection, action, and reconciliation with Indigenous communities as we seek ways to heal with heart and minds together. Welcome to Teacher Tales on Tuesday. My name is Jan Bewley, and I'm fortunate to offer classes in literacy and drama education at Memorial University's Faculty of Education. I'm delighted to have 5 crackerjacks joining me tonight. We're awaiting Don, who's just fiddling with his audio. We're going to talk about reflecting on the legacy of teacher education in Newfoundland and Labrador, where we've been and where we are presently and where we hope to grow. Tonight, I have some questions for each of us to ponder, and I'm going to call on individuals to respond so we all have a chance to share and all help that happen. The Teacher Tales on Tuesday series is also being recorded, and there are people turning and tuning into the conversation right now as I speak. So let's get started. And Barb, I'm going to start off with you. I'd like you to think back to your beginnings as a teacher and share a little bit with us about what drew you to this profession initially.
Okay, I was older when I started teaching. I had a career in banking, and my job was training tellers, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I started off with adult education, and I kind of liked that. And then I thought, yeah, but I need to get them a little earlier. I don't know why. So I decided that I would like to do high school. So I went back. I had my voc ed degree already. I went back and did some courses, and in 1990 I got hired, and I was 30 or 35. No, yeah, 35. So I was older, and I loved it. It was something that I realized that I wanted for my whole life, and I think I learned more than they did.
Yeah.
I had a beautiful school. It was the best school ever, but that's just that's what I believe. My students were fabulous. They were, kind and caring. And I just thought it was special.
And they fueled your love forevermore. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been retired for 11 years, and I'm still in contact with them. I still get invited to their showers and their weddings and find out what they're doing. So it's really, I was like, lovely. I had, 15,000 kids.
That's great.
Thank God I didn't.
Thanks, Barb. Austin, how about you? Journeying back to your first attraction to the profession of teaching. What pulled you in?
I believe it was part of my growing up in northern Cape Breton, and not having teachers for a number of grades because it was an isolated community, and developed a great love of reading because the bookmobile would come around on a regular basis. The students who didn't like to read got out all kinds of books so I could read them, and I think that led to a great love of teaching, and I've always been interested.
Recording in progress.
When I heard Barb talking about her classes and wonderful children, I just wanted to very quickly mention that I finished my career in CBS as principal of a school in CBS, the most wonderful community, wonderful students, great parents, and a fantastic staff. But I also wanted to mention that it was in my first 2 years of teaching that I met my most wonderful student, the most gifted individual that I had ever run into. And this individual student was light years beyond most of the other students in electronics and in science. And we developed a kind of relationship where I was able to help him to progress in that. And he went on to compress the story very quickly to become a graduate of MIT and had a wonderful career in the electronics industry. And my children and my wife still tell me that I'm teaching, because if something happens and I can make a teachable moment of it, I tend to do it.
You do it.
I tend to do it. And I had written down a number of stories, and I hope we get to exchange a number of stories as we go along.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, Barb, for your input.
Thanks, Austin. Krista, how about you? What drew you to this wonderful profession?
I think it all began with having great teachers who made it look appealing, who actually genuinely looked like they enjoyed what they did every day. And I'm trying to remember a time when I wasn't in a classroom, and I can barely remember a phase in my life. I just kind of have always, in one capacity or another, been involved with education, whether I was tutoring, whether I was working as a student assistant or educational assistant, a youth worker. Like, it's somehow I was always connected to schools, and I would doubt myself and question if I wanted to be a social worker and question if I wanted to become a psychologist. And I always kept coming back to, no, I want to be in a classroom. I want to be a teacher. And it's really about being a part of something so worthwhile, building meaningful relationships. And at the end of every day, there's always a moment that makes it worth it. And that's what keeps me there.
That's a crystallized T-shirt moment there. I like it. I like what you said there. Dawn, we're going to give you a chance with your audio. Give it a go and see if we can hear you.
Did you just hear my phone go off?
Fabulous.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Krista.
Dawn, so glad we can hear you now. What pulled you into the teaching profession way back when, Dawn?
Well, I think I've always had a little inclination for teaching. I even remember attending grade 9 and grade 10 and practicing in my bedroom before several mirrors how to teach and that sort of thing. I think it was kind of, in me, that sort of way. Anyway, so, well, of course, needless to say, well, back then, when you passed grade 11, if you didn't have French, you couldn't get to university. So, well, what happened to me was I went to summer school. I think it might have been the best thing that ever happened, because I went to summer school and they took us all out in the auditorium and they said, now we're going to name a number of places, and if you'd like to teach, here are the places to go. So, well, anyway,
Wow.
So Black Island was one of the places. I had no idea where it was. And so I had to find it on the map later, and took the train, went down there, and had a lovely year, a great year. Students great, and lonely for a little while, but anyway, I got over it.
I can see the twinkle in your eye to this day, Dawn. Were there teachers in your family that egged you on to do this, to pursue this profession?
Yeah, there was a number. Yeah, there was a number of teachers in my family, but maybe so. They indirectly have kind of nudged me into the profession, and I had 30 years, and it's been a lovely. I can't remember one bad year. So,
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Janice, how about you? Over to you.
Wow. I think back over my schooling myself, and I think that probably had the biggest influence on me wanting to be a teacher. I really liked my teachers in school, and I thought they were amazing people. I think they had a real influence on the direction many of us took, and we really respected them. I had 3 brothers older than me, and they were choosing their paths, and they had already gone and done something, and they hadn't tried teaching. They hadn't done that. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. And my schooling was, high school especially, was exciting. And I just wanted to continue that kind of lifestyle. I liked school. I liked being around other people, and I liked the camaraderie of in school. I never felt alone. And I feel that I wanted to bring that to my class as well, you know. Now I started, I retired 6 years ago. So many moons ago, I was in Harlow. And I don't know if any of you guys have been to Harlow, but there was a pay phone down on the wall for all the residents. And someone shouted, "Jan, you're wanted on the phone." And I went down, and it was a job offer. That was my last term at MUN, and it was a job offer across the ocean in this little tiny place in Newfoundland, and I'd never been there. And I was so excited. I said, "Of course, I'm going to take this job." and then they asked for another one of us, and she came down, and they offered her a job in the community right next door to where I was going. So yeah, that's how it all started. My roommate in Harlow and I, we began as teachers in a little community that we knew very little about, but we were so glad we were there. And I spent 13 years in that community. So yeah, loved it.
A few tears shed when you left there.
Oh, well, yeah, well, they were shed by me too. I always had positive experiences. Of course, I had bad days, but never a bad year there, Don. No, I agree. I had a few days that were wobbly, but no, they were, it's the journey. It's the journey. It's, you know, and I remember saying that to some young staff members in the year that I left my staff, that it's not about retirement, it's about the journey getting there. You know, it was, loved every minute.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for that first round of wonderful responses. Krista, I'm going to start with you with this question, and I'm wondering if you can pinpoint a particular child without naming. You can think of a fictitious name for him or her, or a learning incident that taught you something about humanity or life in general. And if you would start us off on that.
With pleasure, because very quickly a very particular student comes to mind. So this is when I was working as an educational assistant in Alberta. And this was a school where it doesn't exist anymore, actually. I was part of a moment in time there. It was kind of a district site for students with high behavioral needs, that sort of thing. And we only had 30 students in our school. So in that environment, we had an especially perfect opportunity to really get to know our students. And one particular young gentleman came to us with a history of often skipping school. And this was a big problem, and we were supposed to make sure that he wasn't doing and pay close attention and closely supervise this young gentleman. As I got to know him, what we learned was that the reason he was frequently skipping school is that sometimes one of his caregivers would come home early from work and was not a safe person for his younger brother to be at home with alone. So he would make sure that before his brother got out of his brother would be dismissed earlier because he was in primary school, he would leave to make sure he was at home to be a protector. Now, of course, things had to happen so that the appropriate help could be provided to this family so that child could be safe. But in that moment, what I realized was that kids who come to us with labels of, defiance and deviance, at risk, they're just labels. They don't tell the story and they don't reveal the whole picture. And it really reminded me to step back from those moments of frustration, of behavior, and really get curious about what's behind it. And oftentimes we could never imagine really the story behind it. But when we take the time to get to know students and build relationship so that they can be forthcoming, we really do see the humanity in their choices. Indeed.
And how many years ago was that story first in your heart, Krista?
That story comes from my first few years working as an educational assistant. So we're talking, let's see, I was in China for 6 years. We're talking close to 20 years ago, between 15 and 20 years ago. And I will never, ever forget him. Popped into my mind instantly when you asked the question.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this profession, I think, that those stories continue to live here, right?
Absolutely.
Austin, how about you? Is there a learning incident or a particular child, a story that taught you about humanity?
Well, I've been retired 23 years. I was a teacher for 29, 10 of which were administration. And there are so many stories. I knew something like this was going to come up, so I wrote down just some names or some incidents and so forth. But I'd like to focus on one, and that was back in 1969. So I go back a long way. My wife and I, after my first year teaching in Nova Scotia, I saw a newspaper advertising for teachers in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know where it was, but I knew how to read a map. So we packed up and drove 2,500 miles to Sault Ste. Marie, and I began teaching there at double the salary I was making in Nova Scotia, which still wasn't very much. But in my first week, I met a young student. He didn't appear to be on the same plane as other students. He seemed to have some different characteristics than the other students in the class. And as I got to know him, I found that he had a huge interest in electronics, because he said to me, sir, your car doesn't have a back speaker. I said, no, Dennis, it doesn't. I can do that. So grade 7 now, so he put in a back speaker. And he told me the story of going to North Bay, and I'm talking here about potential and recognizing potential. Mm-hmm. He went to North Bay, and his grandmother's TV wasn't working. There was a big line coming down the middle of it. And so his mom went to Walmart, so he took the TV apart. When she come home, the TV was on the floor in 1,000 pieces, and he put it together, put it in YouTube, and it worked like a charm. We got to know each other well, and he did certain things for me in the science program, like build a helicopter that flew, little one, launched rockets. Now we're back in 1969. So out on the school ground and launching this rocket that goes up a couple 100 feet, little parachute comes out and it drifts back down to Earth. I couldn't keep up with him. I didn't have the background knowledge that he needed. He could sit down and draw me a circuit board. Now, I don't know many people who can read a circuit board, let alone draw it. But he did that. And so we came to an agreement of sorts. And I would go to the library and I would get electronic books for him, which were at high school level or beyond.
Sure.
After he left me, he went to another collegiate where the teacher there recognized his potential and got him teaching electronics to the grade 10 and 11 students. He was in grade 9.
Mm-hmm.
he continued with that kind of education until he eventually went to MIT and got his doctorate at MIT and came back. And I don't think he came back to the Sault Ste. Marie because I wasn't there anymore, but he did come back to that kind of profession and had an amazing career. And I think the good part of the story is that I'm still in contact with him.
Wow.
He was a wonderful, wonderful student, and he didn't fit the normal pattern, but you could actually look at him and see the potential that was there. Yeah.
What a
And,
beautiful story.
If we have time sometime, with all of us, I'm sure we had the same kinds of stories and the same kinds of individuals and the potential that you see in them. Some of them with difficulties that have to be addressed, and these students who move beyond those difficulties
And find their way
and
because
find their way.
the windows are opened, right? It's lovely. What a beautiful story, Austin. Barb, I could see you leaning in. You go next.
Well, I can't pick just one person, but I can pick my program. So I developed a cooperative education program at our school in religious studies, which was basically unheard of. And I had 5 years of students, and they were so inspiring throughout the whole school, not just for me, but for the whole school, that we developed like so many volunteers from our school, because it was almost like a volunteer program, except they got credit. And I mean, they would go.
Where did they go, Barb? Where did they
My
go
school,
as volunteers?
they went everywhere. The church, senior citizens, daycares, Boys and Girls Club, the gathering, like wherever they could go. And then eventually, of course, we got career ed and they had to do volunteer service. But for the first 5 years, from 1993 to 1998, we did a co-op program. So it was, linked to a subject. And it was like we traveled to Cobourg, Ontario, and they fit in so well there and volunteered there. And then the people there came back to St. John's, and we hung out with Premier Tobin, and it was amazing. Like, it was like, oh, wow, this is like, and I think that's the part of teaching, that it was relevant. Like, no matter what I taught, whether it was English or world religion or literature, they always found the link. And I just thought that was like so wonderful that their education was relevant to them. And it was, I think, one of my brightest shining stars was that whole process of in class and out of class. Yeah. Learning something and then applying it to the real world. And putting it just made, I think it made me feel valuable for them, but for them, I think it was just, an eye-opener that they could learn so much that was really needed in the world.
That's so powerful. And you provided that
probably pick 1 or 2 people from there, but it was 5 years of, and then of course the government funding ran out, but we kept ours for 2 whole years after, because it was so important to the kids. Yeah. It was.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb, for that. Jan, over to you. What stands out for you?
Wow, I've had so many standout moments. But I started out as a special needs teacher. So I was, my first position, remember going to the school, and actually I didn't even go to the school on the first day. I ended up, someone said it's the small white building on the lower road. And I went and knocked on the door, and two gentlemen came out, and they were the maintenance men for the school board. And they said, no, this is the machine shop. The school is just over the road a little bit, so I went over. It was a 3-room school, and yeah, my classroom at that time was and things have changed so much, but my classroom was in the basement, and it was a self-contained special needs room. I had some beautiful children in my class, and I think we had so much freedom back then that I did things probably with my first class that I would probably never do again, because we were just close knit. And yeah, I remember taking them trouting. Went to the river with them one day. The principal said, yes, you know you can go take them, and we went, and we had a glorious day in the river and got a few fish. As a matter of fact, I had 5 boys and 1 little girl. And the youngest little boy, I didn't know that he was allergic to fly bites. And oh my goodness, by the time we were ready to go back to the school, his poor little eyes were swollen shut. Yeah, and it was, I have so many wonderful, like, just fun things that I have memories of. There's one particular little girl, I taught primary after that, so many times in primary, they move on. And of course, being in kindergarten or grade 1, you hope that they're going to remember you, but it's not always that way. It's a long schooling. They have lots of teachers. And there was one little girl in particular, she was so empathetic towards her other classmates. She was an amazing little child. If anybody needed help, she would always reach out to them. And I remember through my years in that primary school, while she was there, she always made sure she came back with a Christmas card. And she moved on to the elementary school and then on to the junior high. And I remember one very stormy Christmas. We were just leaving school. School was out, and it was after lunch, and there was a tap on my classroom window. And this was Sydney with my Christmas card. And to this day, Sydney is she's working on her master's in psychology at MUN, and we still share a Christmas card. And I spoke with her mom a couple of Christmases ago, because I was afraid that I was missing her if I sent it to her home address. And she said, oh my gosh, Miss Walsh, she can't give that up. She's afraid to give that up now. Yeah. But I just, so many wonderful children and so many wonderful memories.
Yeah. Thanks for
it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick.
Yeah, thank you for that. Dawn, over to you. Is there a student that stands out, or a learning incident that you can pinpoint?
I think mine is rather general. I think I can remember a lot of students. We had a wonderful time together. I do remember a number of students that I had to leave the room and go out around the school and chase them and get them into the classroom. One particular guy, of course, every other day, he'd come late and he'd be out by the window, and I'd have to run out, catch him, bring him in. But strangely enough, and he was really he was nice, and but he did have this talent for carpenter work. And the Christmas concerts, of course, way back when we did Christmas concerts and built a stage and that sort of thing. Well, he was right in his element when we started to build a stage and that sort of thing. So I think for me, maybe is that I think I've learned long afterwards. As most of you know, you continually run into students, and Mr. Case, so high, and you don't know who they are until they tell you, and I think I've realized that students that I thought probably weren't going to do that good really shone. They did really well. They proved me wrong, and and I think that was the learning for me. You can never ever say somebody is no, you're never going to do that. That can never be the case, right? Because they probably will. Yeah. So anyway, it was a wonderful time for me as well.
That's lovely. That's a lovely story. I've got so many questions here, and I'm going to pick my next favorite one. I'm going to preface this by saying I taught in a mostly Mennonite school once, and a gift that I received at Christmas time from a very large family of 8 children. There were 7 boys and a little girl, and I taught Eleanor. And on December 22nd, she arrived in the classroom with a shoebox, and it had green tissue paper and wax paper coming out the top. And when I peeled back the top, her mother had made traditional chocolates by dipping the leaves of the poinsettia into chocolate and having them set on the windowsill in the sunroom. They had no power. They were traditional Mennonites. And then the leaf would be peeled off, and this very delicate chocolate leaf was inside this tissue paper. And I've never forgotten that gift from that child. That year was extraordinary for me, and those years there. I received an apron and a Raggedy Ann doll and all kinds of lovely things that were made by that tradition. And I wonder if there's a teacher gift, and it might be a gift of a letter, it might be a gift of a comment, it might be something that you were actually given that you can recall. Maybe you still have it. I don't know. I'm going to start with you, Austin. Was there something that you were given that you recall?
Well, there are many things in terms of Christmas ornaments and national cultural things, but I think, and I was thinking about this one today, a number of years ago, I was living back home in Nova Scotia, and I came home here to Newfoundland for Christmas, and my daughter, at my daughter's place, and the phone rang one evening, and she said, "Dad, it's for you." So I picked it up, and I still to this day don't know how this former student got the number. I just don't know. But he said, "Mr. Holly," and I said, "Yes." And he said, "This is Michael," and he gave me his last name. And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Oh, yes, I remember you." At that particular time in my school, I guess you would say in terms of discipline, he was the king of the undisciplined students. And he left school. And when he was leaving, as he was going out the door, I happened to be on lunch duty or whatever it was. And I said to him, "Mike, you really should consider staying in school because, down the road, you're going to need that education." And he said, "No, I'm going." So he went. And I, of course, totally lost track of him. This phone call, he said to me, "Can I meet you for breakfast?" So I met him for breakfast at the hotel up on Kinmount Road. When he came in, the businessmen in the area, in their booths, stood up and shook hands with him as he was walking by. And he sat down and he said, "I want to tell you a story. My mother didn't want me. I was kicked out of the house when I was 11. I hitchhiked to Toronto when I was 15. The police found me under a bridge and took me to a halfway house that looked after me and fed me and clothed me." And he said, "Eventually I made the decision to go back to school." And he said, "Every year I come back to Toronto and I give a donation to this halfway house to help them with their work." He said, "I remember when you said to me that I should stay in school because I would need the education. I went back to school. I got my degree, and now I own, and he told me, I'm not sure if it was 4 or 5 companies, and I'm doing very, very well.
Hmm.
And I was blown away because, well, especially first of all, when everybody in the place, all the businessmen in the place who were having breakfast got up and shook hands with him when he came in. And the
Hmm.
respect and the fact that he had the ability or the fortitude to pull himself up by his bootstraps and do something with himself and go back to school and make a success of himself. That's one of the greatest gifts, I think, that you can see. And just another very quick one. There's a young boy in another school I had, and he was in special education,
Mhm.
but he always felt that he could do better. And when he got to the end of grade 7, he had a wonderful teacher. It wasn't me. He had a wonderful teacher. He finished grade 7, went back into the academic stream. The next time I saw him was his graduation at Brother Rice.
Wow.
And he had come all the way from having difficulties in academics to graduating from a regular academic program in grade 11. Those are great gifts. You can't put a price tag on those.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Austin. Krista, over to you. Is there something that stands out?
Yeah, well, I have a flood of images in my mind of different gifts that I've received and the stories that go with them. I mean, there's even this, I got a little bent in my bag, but even this little, origami that a teacher gave me or a student gave me just last week. But I think the one that stands out the most, so it's actually back in the same school that I was referring to earlier in the previous story. And this young boy, he was in grade 7, and, he was just a little guy, but he had like the ginormous attitude. And no matter what I tried, I just could not connect with him. There was this wall up. The behavior issues were huge as his attitude. So I was working so hard to get through to him. And somewhere along the line, I heard that he really liked the show SpongeBob SquarePants. At the time, it wasn't as popular as it eventually became. I had never heard of it, but I searched it up and recorded some episodes, started watching them. I learned the theme song. A group of us teachers got together and ended up singing the theme song in one of the Monday morning assemblies, which I did catch a little kind of smirky smile on his face that day. Months later, there's a CD on my desk, like one of those, so I'm dating myself a little bit here, but like a burnt CD back when that was a thing that teenagers did. And so I stuck it in my car, and it was labeled on the back, the various songs, extremely inappropriate gangster rap. But in the middle of this CD, I'm like skipping through these songs in my car on the way home at the end of the day. And in the middle of these rap songs is the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. This was months later. And that to me told me that he got it. He saw the effort to connect and to reach out in that tiny, what I thought so insignificant, maybe ineffective way, but it did reach him. And that was like his little acknowledgement. And yeah, like I still have that CD. I will never part with it. And yeah, it taught me so much in that moment. It was just such a moment of reflection, and it was so incredibly unexpected.
Yeah, lovely. He was saying, "I'm here," and you're
exactly.
Here. Yeah, that's lovely, Krista.
And thank you for seeing me.
Yeah, exactly. Barb, over to you.
Well, there are all kinds of things that we get at Christmas, and all parents and everything. But you know what? I think the best gift I was ever given was the respect my students gave me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that made my day. It made my career. When I retired, students came from, the first year I was there in 1990 to like 2011. It was that, to me, was a gift to honor my career, and I don't think I could ever have been given a more beautiful gift. I think it was just it really made my teaching career special. I knew it was special, but when your students come back and say, "Oh, Miss, we're really sorry to see you go, but we know that you want to do this and you want to do that," and it was really powerful, I think, and very powerful. And respect is so important. I mean, I always taught that in my class, and you have to earn it. It's not given. You earn your respect. If you respect your students, they will respect you. And it came back in spades.
Yeah.
So from the bottom of my heart.
And I wonder if there are students that you taught watching tonight, Barb. It's heartwarming to think of the viewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have several that have gone through. Yeah.
I can hear the emotion in all of your voice.
Yeah.
Dawn, down to you. What story have you got for us around a gift or?
Yeah, well, of course, as you've all said, every Christmas you get, or at the end of the year, you get some little gifts and that sort of thing. I had been in Heart's Content for 5 years teaching, and I was leaving and going to another community. And the grade 7s there were pretty sad, and they made all kinds of big signs, and they did have a gift for me. It was a beautiful, I have it here, but I couldn't find it, but I will find it, a beautiful clock.
Oh.
And it's a very unusual shape, sort of, and it stands so high. And I don't know, I never even asked where they got it. But anyway, it's a beautiful clock, and I cherish it with everything. But although I can't find it, but I know it's here somewhere among my many mementos. But they showed me a great deal of. They were pretty sad. I was sad, and like Barb said, respect. So it was yeah.
Thank you, Dawn. Jan, over to you.
Well, it's funny because I didn't know if you were going to ask this, but I was searching for some memorabilia or something that would spark some memories, and I have it here. And this child in my last year of teaching went through cancer treatment. And she's doing well. She's doing really well, and I believe she's in, I don't know, grade 9 or 10 now. She's doing wonderful. But I taught grade 1, and the beauty of grade 1 was the skill they learned to read in grade 1. And I absolutely, my most precious memories are when they realize that they're doing it. I read that book, Mrs. Walsh. I read that book, and they're so excited and so eager to move on to the next one. It's amazing. But this precious child, she couldn't always come to school, especially if there were colds and flus on the go, because she was having her treatments. But at the end of the year, her mom came and she said, "Oh, Mrs. Walsh," she said, "she just had to get this done." I don't know if you can see it. But she wrote me a book. It's called Miss Walsh's Last Day, and it's fully illustrated and written. It's a wonderful story, and it's such a memory for me, because it tells, of course, the names of the kids in the class and the teachers who taught with me. And I had this quirky little habit of if the reading was great that day, I danced on the table. So, yeah, and you kind of forget about those things. And I took up the book the other day, and there I am. I'm dancing on the table in the story. So that I have so many precious memories.
Show us, we have to see the illustration, Jan, before we sign off. I can see Krista nodding. Everybody's saying, we got to see the picture of you.
Yes, dancing on the table.
There I am.
Oh,
There
I
I am.
love it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
How wonderful. Ah,
I wonder, I sometimes think, do they really know the gift that they gave me? You know, their warmness and their genuine love and kindness. You know, there's so little. In the primary years, I taught kindergarten, grade 1. Spent the last probably 15 years in grade 1, and they were just so precious. And that's my gift. They were certainly, and I think of them so much because they were just beginning, and now I see them. Many of them have graduated high school and gone on to university, and it's just so rewarding. It's wonderful.
Especially when they call you mom.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of that.
I did too.
Yeah.
Oh, miss, I forgot. It's kind of
what a wonderful first gift you have given the Teacher Tales on Tuesday series. And it has flown by. I'm going to be incredibly punctual here because we said we would keep people for 45 minutes initially, and we have consumed all of that time and more. I'm most grateful for your presence here. I want to say special thanks to Morris Berry and Craig Adams and Angela Hunt, who pulled some magic strings in getting this all to happen. The next Teacher Tales on Tuesday is at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, October the 26th. And we'll maybe share some Halloween tales, and a new group of teachers will be joining me. I want to, again, just say how appreciative we all are for your gifts to the teaching profession, all of you, and what an honor to be in your presence tonight. So I will bid you all good night, and we can leave with that image of Jan dancing on the table.
Up again, Jan.